Hi, I'm Jeremy Rueggeberg. Thanks for joining the show. What you're about to see is the shortened version of the full-length interview. If you'd like to see more of the interview, please go to our Patreon page. Information is in the show notes. Now, let's get to the show. Hey there, welcome to my house. I'm about to head downtown to the studio to interview one of my favorite people, Rafi Salazar II. I first got to know Rafi, it was a few years ago, and I was super impressed with the amount of knowledge and understanding that he has regarding patient care and patient outcomes. You know, Rafi is not a person who wastes time on unnecessary things, including thoughts and words. You'll soon see what I mean by that. Literally everything he shares and says is quite meaningful. It's well thought through, it's applicable, and it's quite a talent, and he's got it. So patients and providers alike, you're going to get so much out of this episode, I promise. Well, I got to go now. Where are my keys? Hope you enjoyed the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I am originally from Steubenville, Ohio, which is a small coal mining town, but I don't really claim it because we moved down when I was 6. So I've been in Augusta basically my whole life.
Your Southern English is good, by the way.
My Southern English, yeah. My wife makes fun of me because when we go up to Kentucky to see her relatives, she's like, man, your Southern accent comes out more than mine. You know, it is what it is. So I live here at Augusta. I own and operate Proactive Rehabilitation and Wellness. We're a multidisciplinary outpatient rehab facility. And I also run Rehab You Practice Solutions, which is a patient engagement and retention strategy firm for healthcare organizations. What else do you need to know? I've got 4 kids, 1 on the way. Been married for 9 years.
Yeah, that is... That's robust. I don't know what other word to use with that.
Yes, I have a very wide personal experience, right?
Now, have you started employing any of your children yet? Are they at that age?
Not yet. They're going to be there, though.
Okay.
At least doing the lawn or something sooner or later.
Something has to be, yes. So one of the things we love to do on this podcast is bring out formative stories and to have you share them about what has made you who you are today. So one of my questions then are, what are some of the roles that either your parents, family, friends have played in your life? Formative memories with them.
Sure. So probably the biggest one has been my father. He came to this country in the 80s. I know that's like so cliche. He came to this country, but he came here to do some engineering, agricultural engineering, with the intent of going back down to Costa Rica, which is where he's from, to hopefully run a farm and do the whole 9 yards. Ended up liking this country so much, he saw the opportunity was here, decided that this was going to be where his family was going to have the best shot at, you know, being successful or just having a better life than what was possible down in Costa Rica, just because they came from a fairly wealthy background. My grandfather imported tractors back when Costa Rica was going through an industrial revolution. I know you're trying not to smile. Like he imported John Deere's.
I think they're called Juan Deere's.
Yeah, Juan Deere's down there. Anyway, so built a huge company, had a lot of success, lost it all because it's just some of the way property rights and things were back then. So he came to this country, really liked it, fell in love with my mom, who was also from Honduras, from Costa Rica, and they had both wanted to go back, ended up staying here. The rest is history. But growing up, probably more times than I could count, my dad would say something to me along the lines of, "You're a Salazar. You represent our family. You got to do your best." And then when I got a little older, he was an agricultural engineer, so he spent a lot of time working with farmers in the South. It was up in Ohio, and then they moved him down to be a regional conservation manager or something like that. And he told me a lot of times, when whether it was picking out something to wear or picking a job that I wanted to do, he said to me on a couple occasions, Rafi, when people hear the word Salazar, they hear peach picker. So you need to be better than everybody else. You need to be cleaner dressed than everybody else. You need to, basically by your actions and by the way you look, you need to be better.
No pressure, son. But
Well, I mean, it wasn't, the family pride thing coupled with that has probably driven me a lot. And then my grandfather was a vascular surgeon, and, just being in and around with him and seeing, his interaction with his patients in the clinic that he ran up in Ohio just kind of instilled in me kind of the love for healthcare and just serving people.
So you were actually our February 2021 front cover story.
Yes.
And I was really excited to have your story in there. And I was reading through your interview again, and you mentioned an interesting story about you going fishing and how you got injured and how that kind of began your healthcare career. Can you kind of take us back into that?
Sure. Yeah. So it was the summer before my senior year in high school, and we were going to go on a mission trip to Texas, me and some folks from church, and we were like, man, it's going to be a very long time till we see water because we're going to the desert. So why don't we go fishing at the river? Was down at the river, down behind the waterworks. Anybody who's from Augusta knows where that is.
Oh, yeah.
We were not doing anything illicit. We were just fishing.
That's where our OnlyFans started, actually, behind that area.
So making our way back to shore, slipped on a muddy rock, landed on a bottle. And I got up from the water like this, and I was like, I'm fine. And my friend's eyes got about this big, and I looked, and I had a shard of glass sticking out of my palm, and just, instinct, I grabbed it and pulled it out of my hand, and blood just started squirting everywhere. I did hit an artery because it was like, so we wrapped it up in a shirt, hiked all the way back to the car. I'd lost a lot of blood. I don't remember the whole ride to the hospital. I was coming in and out of consciousness. We got to the hospital, and the doctors said, you're going to need surgery to repair this joker. So the summer before my senior year into part of my senior year in high school, I spent in and out of a occupational therapy hand clinic 3 days a week for basically the balance of the summer and into the fall.
What is it about the rehab ecosystem that you love so much?
I think that it's, in other specialties, a lot of times you're kind of like not fly by night. That sounds bad, but you see your patients in very certain points, right? Like you'll see your orthopedic surgeon for a pre-op. You might see him for an injection to try to stave off surgery. You'll see him 6 months later to see if it worked, right? Then they'll schedule you for a pre-op. They'll see you for your surgery. They'll see you 6 weeks afterwards, and then follow up in a year. With rehab in particular, like I said, we're seeing people a couple times a week, usually for extended period of time, 6, 8, 12 weeks. So what you're able to do in that short amount of time, even though our length of relationship might be shorter than like an orthopedic surgeon, it's much more intense, and we're able to build stronger relationships that we're able to, if you're doing it right, leverage on behalf of the patient to help achieve better outcomes and, for the long run, better health.
Right. Now, I remember from your interview as well, I asked you how do you measure quality care, and what are some things you've put in place? And you have like a manifesto with 7 points, and one of them is you really wanted your patients to be empowered to take their healthcare back, in a sense, into their own hand, have some sense of responsibility for it. And I think that's great and fantastic. And one of my questions then is, how does that happen? Because it seems like today, most people look at medicine like they look at getting on an airplane. Like they don't want to try to fly the plane. They just want to sit and say, tell me, you can tell me what you're going to do, how high we're going to fly, how fast we're going to go, but just make it go where it says on the end of the ticket. I want to end up in Seattle, not Boston. So do people really take responsibility, or are they just wanting to kind of, for you just to spoon feed them what you want them to do?
I think it's a little bit of both. For the most part, people, especially because I'm in rehab, so we're seeing folks that have a lot of chronic musculoskeletal pain or musculoskeletal pain in general, which our country spends millions and millions of dollars a year trying to fix, where there is no quick fix, right? You're not going to get a pill. For those patients in particular, they are looking for something. They're like, listen, tell me what I need to do. What do I need to put in place? How do I need to change my lifestyle in order to not feel pain, right? Or in order to be able to do what I want to do. So that's an easier sell for empowering patients. The other, probably the other 40%, 50% of patients that you see might just want a quick fix. And we rely very heavily, at least at Proactive, on education. So we do educate our patients a lot of times on what the options are, what the outcomes could be given which option they choose, what factors they have at play. Even in the greater landscape of healthcare, patient choice and patient empowerment is, at least on paper, a virtue that the powers that be, would like to push on everybody. The problem is that most of these patients go to a doctor and the doctor says, okay, these are your options, make your choice. And because doctors are pressured with time and they're seeing 7 minutes with a patient, they're trying to move on, they end up giving this patient some pamphlets. These are your 14 or 5 options, whatever. It doesn't really matter the number. Here are your options. You got to read these over and make a decision, because we're able to see our patients for a longer period of time, for longer appointment times, and then kind of that intense plan of care that I mentioned earlier. We're able to take the time and say, okay, like, this is what that pamphlet means in reality.
So you're the interpreter, in a sense, a middle person.
Yeah, I very much like to say, for most of us ancillary healthcare providers, like, our real job is being a knowledge translator. We're supposed to take what I call our vast, heady knowledge, the technical knowledge of healthcare, and we're supposed to be able to distill it down in easy to understand language that our patients can understand, but then also apply it to their specific situation.
So speaking of distilling, you can't prescribe opioids anymore, but do you think alcohol could fix a lot of these problems? I mean, helps me a lot.
I'll be honest. I've had several patients come through my clinics throughout the years, having said that they've turned to the bottle because of their chronic pain, and we try to ease that, get them off of that, right?
Right. Yeah. So going back into kind of a medical terminology, do you have, as you look at holistically taking care of a patient, do you see things more from an osteopathic view, or are you allopathic, or are you omnipathic, or whatever it is? Are you both in?
Yeah. So I tend to very much, and I think I mentioned this in the article, we use a biopsychosocial approach.
I was hoping you'd say that word.
Exactly.
That was a lead into it.
It was a lead into it.
Biopsychosocial.
And really, just a biopsychosocial approach really just means that the way we view a patient is not just biomechanical. We're not just looking at the structure, the anatomy, the tissues. We're looking at those other factors that influence a patient's experience of pain, which is going to be unique for every patient, which would be the social or the environmental factors and the psychological or the mental factors, right? So probably the best example of this is something like chronic pain. And we used to see this a lot of the times when I worked at the VA. Someone has chronic musculoskeletal pain that's non-diagnosed. No, we don't know why. You just have a lot of pain. Well, this patient might have PTSD as a comorbidity, and they have a flashback, and the next day they're rating their pain as a 10 out of 10, right? Mm-hmm. Nothing's changed physiologically at all.
Right.
They didn't fall, they didn't hurt themselves, they didn't tweak a muscle, but they experienced some sort of psychosocial stressor that increased their perceived level of pain. Mm-hmm. So when we approach a patient, we approach them kind of with that viewpoint that, yes, you were referred to us because of your shoulder pain, and we know that there's something going on, that maybe there is an issue with your tissues, right? That we can fix, but maybe there's other aspects that are affecting that shoulder pain that we can address as well, that'll help you give a better and ultimately have a better quality of life when we're done with you.
So here's a crazy question then. What exactly is pain? Because pain is not something that's objective. It's very subjective, right? And it's the hardest thing to nail down.
Well, and people have written books on this, so
I'm sure they have. Don't
rely just on me.
I'm sure you have interviewed some of these people too, right?
I have, yes. So I think
there was a movie made too, by the way. It's called Major Pain.
Oh,
you remember that one?
Different kind of pain. So the best working definition that we have about pain is, I'm going to butcher this, all you pain science folks, please forgive me already, but I'm going to paraphrase. It's something along the lines of pain is an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience that's based off of either real or perceived tissue threat. So to distill it down, pain is entirely in your brain. Not that pain is in your head, but it's a creation of your brain, and it's a protective mechanism. If something hurts, we don't want to keep doing it because we want to eventually, survive in the gene pool. So pain, if you think about it that way, is really a protective mechanism. All of these nerves in your body are always sending signals to your brain, right? You're sitting on your chair, your fanny right now is getting input up to your brain, and your brain's saying, "I'm sitting on a cushy chair right now. It's not, not a threat.
It's pleasant, yeah.
Exactly, it's pleasant. It's not a threat, so I'm not going to create pain." But depending on your history as an individual, you might have had an injury on, maybe you have sciatica, maybe you have something else like that, and your brain knows that if you sit long enough, that big nerve running down out of your glutes and down your leg is going to be aggravated. So it will make a sensation of discomfort or pain because of your own previous history. So pain is very unique, and it is very dependent on your own past experiences. So you touch an iron when you're hot, when you're young, when it's hot, you know that it gets burned. If you bump it, and I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but you put your hand on a burner, again, even if it's not on, and you first look down at it and you jerk your hand away, right?
Yeah, real fast, yeah.
Part of that is that protective mechanisms, and pain works very much the same way. So it is very context specific, it's very individualistic insofar as what might cause pain for you might not cause pain for me, and then the intensity, again, varies depending on our past experiences, right?
Oh, I came all the way back here to tell you. I forgot to mention this, but if you like the show, please subscribe. Tell us tell us what you're most passionate about in regards to healthcare and patient care. Because this is kind of your MO. You have a signature that you've been working on the past decade, really.
Man, I'll take it. I think the biggest thing, and I mentioned it before, is just relationships. So I always like to say that healthcare, at the end of the day, is a human experience. It's one person that is, skilled in the art of healing, helping another person, another human, on their own unique road to recovery, right? And it's our job as individuals, as clinicians, to kind of meet individuals where they're at on their road to recovery and kind of guide them along. And part of that is the relationship that you build with them. I referenced it earlier, but there's a lot of research out there about, they call it therapeutic alliance, they call it the therapeutic relationship, whatever you want to call it. But anybody that's in healthcare probably has that one patient that calls them every 6 months for no other reason than just to say, "Hey, I have a question," or, "How's everything going? Can I come back and see you?" Whatever it is, you have those patients, and when you think about what happened to those patients, like, why is that patient reaching out to me after so many years, or, why do they keep coming back? Part of it is that relationship. They feel comfortable. They feel like they can trust you. They feel like you truly care about them.
Do you often have people that pop back in and they just they come in because they have shoulder pain or knee pain, but they end up talking about their marriage and other things in life that you almost look at you like a priest or a pastoral kind of role?
I'm a big fan of open-ended questions. I'm a big fan of modifying the Dan Sullivan question, which is basically something along the lines of, let's just say, this is the question, quote, so let's just say it's a year from now, or it's 2 years from now, and you and I are having a beer, or we're having a coffee, and you're happy. You're really, really happy. What's happened in the last year, the last 2 years, that has made you so happy? And then you just sit and take notes. And most of the time, I'm going to be talking about rehab here. Like, they might have been referred to you for their shoulder, and you might be expecting them to say, "Well, I can, lift my arm up without any pain." But most of the time, those patients will open up about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I've had patients before tell me, "Well, if I was really happy in a couple of years, I will have quit drinking, moved back in with my estranged wife, and had a better relationship with my kids." And if I had just been going through a normal evaluation, okay, here's your range of motion on your shoulder, your strength is, 4 out of 5, this rotator cuff muscle is weak, I would have totally missed that, right? But having the availability and just the space for a patient, one, to feel comfortable and validated in their pain, but then also given the freedom to say what they feel, as far as their long-term goals and how they view their life down the line, is really powerful. One, for the patient, but then also builds that relationship.
So do you think we socially experience pain and pleasure? So when someone in physical pain comes to you and they're experiencing the biopsychosocial aspect of pain, it's not just physical, and you enter into that with them, does that in and of itself sometimes alleviate some of the pain? It doesn't hurt as bad when I'm sitting there talking with you.
Well, I think it works on there's two interesting things there. So one is just the validation, right? So most patients feel like they have to defend their reported pain, right? They don't want to be seen as drug seeking. They don't want to be seen as malingering. Let's say they have an x-ray or they have an MRI, which looks normal, normal study, no degeneration noted, no soft tissue damage noted. These patients are coming and they want to know that you believe that they feel pain, right? So just simply saying, listen, I know your pain is real. I don't know why you're experiencing pain, but that's what you're here for, and that's what we're going to figure out. Like that in and of itself will help decrease some of that anxiety, some of that guard that they come into a clinic with, and can actually decrease some of their pain, their perceived pain. And then there's that whole social thing, right? So humans have mirror neurons, and they've done studies of people that have been diagnosed with like low back pain, for example. They will watch somebody lifting a box, like from the floor up to a shelf and then back and forth. 2 instances. One person is lifting the box, no pain, and the patient's watching this other person who's not them lifting this box will feel a slight increase in their perceived pain level. But then they'll make that, person, the actor, do this number or kind of, my back a little bit when they're going to lift this box, and the patient's perceived pain level will go up. So there is something about environmental and social cues, both on the kind of like the neuroscience level, like that mirror neuron.
Yeah.
Socially, we're trying to show empathy, but also like if I have pain myself, like, oh man, my own brain is telling me like there's danger around if I get called in to move these boxes.
It enhances your own perceived experience.
Exactly.
And could that go on the opposite side with pleasure or euphoria?
Yeah.
Like being at a concert and being like, this is kind of cool, but like all of a sudden the person next to me is like really enjoying it. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm really into it now.
Yeah, that's a very real social phenomenon. It's the same reason that if somebody smiles at you, most of the time you'll smile back.
So tell us about your podcast. What's the name of the podcast and what it's about, and how can people listen in?
Yeah, so the name of the podcast is The Better Outcomes Show. You can find us anywhere fine podcasts are found.
OnlyFans page?
Yeah, I don't have one of those yet, apparently. So it is a show that the goal of the show is to explore the possibilities of a new healthcare. So we have guests that may or may not be clinicians. They may or may not be business owners. The episode that we just released this week was on mergers and acquisitions in healthcare. So we kind of tackle like the organizational side. What do you need to do to run an efficient healthcare business, but also one that promotes better outcomes in the long term. We've had folks that do healthcare tech, a lot of tech companies, and how that's going to shape the future of healthcare. But the revolving theme around the Better Outcomes Show is how do we make healthcare more human? So all of our guests, all of the show topics at some point kind of point towards that. Like, what can we do in our day-to-day as clinicians or as administrators to make healthcare a more pleasant human experience where we're building strong relationships? And you can find that at www.betteroutcomes.show or at rehabpracticesolutions.com and just click on podcast.
And is it on Spotify and YouTube?
It is on all the places.
Okay. I know you're
Not
on
YouTube yet.
I know you're on LinkedIn.
We are on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I see clips that you release on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Quite a bit. I heart those.
Thank you.
I not just
I appreciate
like it or applaud it. I heart them, Rafi. You owe me big for that.
Yes, I'll take it.
You mentioned in your interview that one of the most formative books you read was The Alchemist.
Oh, yeah.
Why was that very formative for you?
Well, again, my dad was from Costa Rica, and he was big on trying to pass the language down to us. That would be Spanish. So growing up, we had days that
Espanol for you listeners.
Like on Saturdays, we were not allowed to watch English TV. So I didn't know like that Looney Tunes was in English until like I was 12. So in Saturdays,
you were already bearded and everything.
Exactly. So Saturdays was Spanish only. We spoke Spanish. We watched Spanish. We listened to Spanish. And growing up, my dad was like, "Okay, you really need to read this book. It's a great book." It was one of his favorite books. He said, "You need to read this in Spanish." So it was the first book that I read in Spanish. And it wasn't until years later, because I probably fumbled through it as like a teenager. I was like, "This is a great book, whatever." I finished it. I finished a book, check mark, that was in Spanish. And it wasn't until years later, probably in college, where I'd listened to it on Audible. Jeremy Irons does a great rendition of it. That it really hit me like, man, this book is awesome in all the right ways. Part of it is that whole idea of following your dreams. And he says several times in the book, like every person has a role to play in the history of the world. And you're just trying to figure out, what yours is. And that idea really resonated with me. Because I think at the end of the day, us as humans want to do more than punch a clock and get a paycheck, right? Like we want to know that our work is meaningful and it will have lasting impact. And part of that, at least for me, is figuring out like what is my role in the greater fabric of society and what am I doing not just to make material wealth for myself and for my family, but like, what am I going to do that when I'm dead and gone, the world will have been a better place because I was in it?
Last question would be, do you have anything on your bucket list for 2021?
2021. Whew. I would like to not lose my sanity as baby number 5 comes into the world.
When's baby number 5 due?
November 1st.
And how did you choose the name Jeremy for this baby?
Well, it's a she, so that'll be
works. It works.
Jeremia.
Jeremina. I'm honored, by the way, so thank you for that. Well, anything else on the bucket list?
No, I think I'm really just looking to close out this year. So I bought the clinic that I'm now own and operate, Proactive Rehabilitation and Wellness, in October of last year because it made perfect sense to buy a clinic during the middle of a national pandemic. I think the bucket list for that would just be ending the year strong with a good, solid team that likes working together.
Love it.
With a lot of good patients.
Well, good. Well, thank you for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And you can check out Rafi's podcast in the show notes and some of the books that he quoted as well. Anyway, thanks for joining us on the show. Rafi, good luck to you and everything that you're doing. Appreciate you.
Me.
Hola, ¿cómo estás? I want to thank Rafi Salazar for being on the show today. And I want to thank him for using great words like ancillary and using his hands quite a bit because he's so good at it. If you'd like to see more of medical professionals in their element talking about cool things, please subscribe to the channel, go to the YouTube here, or go check out our Instagram here.